Hey Lakers, welcome back to school for this super important, super exciting junior year as the class of 2028. I'm excited to step into this next upcoming school year with you, and it's been super fun so far. So I'm looking forward to kind of starting the second half of your high school experience this upcoming school year. In this workshop, we're going to cover a bunch of stuff, and we're going to be highlighting it together. So you'll see on the screen that we have some updates. So I'm going to give you an overview about the important aspects of 11th grade. We'll talk briefly about some of your broad level post-secondary options to be thinking about, and then looking at some next steps and upcoming opportunities and resources and other items that I'll be sharing with you throughout this kind of fall and spring semester this year. So this video is a kind of a kickoff point, okay? But it is not intended to be an all-encompassing information piece, right? So we're going to be breaking some of this information up into chunks, sharing some different pieces with you as we go through the school year, getting you ready for that final year of high school next year. So to kind of get us started, though, I'm going to take us through a couple nuts and bolts and maybe announcements, housekeeping about this upcoming school year that you just maybe should be aware of and maybe write down as we are in the first couple of weeks of school. So the first one is that we have an upcoming opportunity. This happens every other year in our kind of region. Myself, the Sugar Bowl Academy and Tahoe Expedition Academy and Truckee High School counselors, we kind of organize a biannual or every 2-year college admissions case study opportunity. And that's going to be this school year in 2026, 2027, happening on Saturday, October 3rd. It will actually be hosted at Truckee High School this year. And there's some information that's available on this link, and there will be information shared with you probably already by the time you're watching this video. But there is an opportunity to meet with, there's 8 or 9 reps from super, super awesome schools and colleges around the country who are going to be joining us and working with families and students in small groups to actually review, kind of sit in a case study as a mock application review of fake students. And it's a really, really cool, eye-opening opportunity. It's a great year to participate in this for the junior year class. So I'd highly encourage you try to make that event. It is Saturday, October 3rd in Truckee, and there's some information that will be sent out. It is a registration required event, so you cannot just show up. You must pre-register for this. So I want to make sure that's super well emphasized. The registration will happen all online, and there are limited seats, and it's open to ourselves, Sugar Bowl Academy, Truckee High School, even Incline High School, and some local groups up here. So please take advantage of that. Get registered early. And then if spots do end up filling up for any reason, we do run a wait list. So just, if you're not finding a seat available right away, get yourself on that wait list, and we can likely accommodate you potentially as we get a little bit closer and people's plans tend to firm up. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Just a reminder about kind of how stuff works in the office. And again, this is not necessarily new, but if you are a new student to our school or a new family to our school, this is just an important reminder. We do try to make appointments happen wherever we can. Okay, so I know sometimes there's drop-ins, or if it's an emergency, absolutely. But wherever possible, it's helpful both for myself to manage my time and make sure that I'm efficiently helping students, our school, and you. By using appointment systems, we have a little bit of a different appointment system going into this next school year. We started it last year, but you'll see it looks a little bit different, but it functions essentially the same way. But also it helps you to know that my attention, when you book an appointment, that I don't have competing priorities during that time. Every once in a while, in the worst case scenario, I might have an emergency that pops up, whether that's like an illness at home for myself or one of my kids or something like that I have to cancel appointments, or like an emergency I have to kind of like drop everything and deal with on campus. But generally speaking, that time is protected for us. So I want to make sure that you are honored for that piece too. And appointments really help that. I also have other classes that I work with as well. This year, actually, we'll have a slight difference. It won't directly impact the junior class, but it will potentially impact the timing and opportunities that we're going to be going through together, because Miss Jingo Cohen, our other counselor on campus, is actually expecting her first child this coming November. And so she'll be out sometime during November through kind of the late springtime, probably tail end of April is the expectation. And so during that time, she'll be having a long-term substitute that comes in. And it won't, like I said, won't impact directly the junior class. And so I'll be staying with the junior class through this upcoming school year. But the other class I will be picking up is our senior class. So when she's out, she's assigned to this year, I will be picking up the senior class. And so just because of the time sensitive nature of senior class and senior year items, there might be some shifts in terms of kind of my availability, or like some different things that maybe shift in terms of when things might normally happen for a junior year class, because I'll be picking up that senior year class around November through the winter and then into the springtime. And then when she returns, she'll pick the senior class back up to finish up the school year. So just be aware of that's happening. The 9th and 10th graders will go with our long-term sub, and they'll be supported well with her. So we're excited about that. It's super cool opportunity. We're super stoked for Miss Django Cohen. And we think we have a great long-term sub who I think our underclassmen will also really, really work well with. So just a heads up on that piece as well. Just a reminder, we are kind of trying to re-envision the workshop flow for a couple of reasons. We've done this model a couple times, and instead of kind of trying to do some of these introductory workshops really quick right off the bat when we get back into school and get up, 4 or 5 different parent events in the first couple weeks of school booked and everything kind of lined up and perfect, we're going to be recording videos where we can, because it does a couple of things. Number one is we know there's always questions related to some of the content that we talk about, and we're going to talk about opportunities of how to address some of those things, especially in the junior year. But this format allows people to access the information at a time that's convenient to them, so you don't have to be in one place for the 1 hour meeting that we're going to host potentially. It also allows me to probably do a better job at presenting for the recording, right? So if I'm in person in the auditorium or a classroom, you might see a video of me, and you may see some of these throughout the school year, of me kind of presenting in a live format, but it's just a recording. You can't really see the screen, all that stuff. So with this format, you can actually see the screen. I can do some post-processing to clean it up, cut out things that are unnecessary to try to save your time. And I think the biggest benefit is really just you being able to access this however you like and be able to pause or stop or watch it at twice the speed if you like me talking super fast. Okay, so just be aware. You'll see this through some of the different mediums that we're going to be doing this year. There will be some events that we will host in person as well this school year, but we're going to try to supplement or utilize this format a little bit more where we feel like it's appropriate. Another thing that's coming up for this video, I didn't include any information about our fall PSAT. Most likely when you're watching this, you might be getting information about that. Our registration window for that is very early in the fall window. We're having the PSAT for our current 10th graders and 11th graders in October. So make sure that if you're watching this in the early part of September or so, make sure that you're checking your emails, because the registration deadline, I want to say it's the 25th of September for our kind of mid-March, I forget the exact date, the mid-March PSAT. That's the practice or preliminary SAT. So it's kind of the last opportunity that our students will get to take that practice test. Will happen in October, but then we are planning and have set a date for our spring SAT, and that's an SAT school day. So that's basically the actual SAT in the same formatted experience as our PSAT. So you're taking it on campus, in class. I'm sorry, like in the auditorium. On one of our minimum days in March. And so that's March 10th. So that's just a date. Maybe if you want to mark your calendars now. Registration is not open for this. It will be free. There's no cost to take this SAT school day for students at our school. You do have to register, and we'll communicate the registration steps and time frame as we get a little bit closer, most likely when we get back to school after our winter holiday. Additionally, you'll be getting information if your student is taking any AP courses this year related to AP exam registration. Please make sure junior year is usually the biggest one actually for students at North Tahoe High School for how many AP courses they might be taking in a given year. Please pay attention to all of the information that comes out. I will be the AP coordinator this year, so you'll be hearing from me related to all AP exams. Please, please, please make sure that you pay attention to these. A lot of it has to do with deadlines and requirements. That's not even from us, it's from the college board. So there are limitations that they place on us to collect registrations, for example, or payments, or retakes, or all these other things that kind of tend to pop up around AP testing. Please pay attention to this information. The last thing that we want to do is tell you can't take an exam. or charge you a late fee that we get charged by College Boards. So please pay attention to the information we're going to be sending out. We did share a AP agreement document in your data confirmation process. Your AP teacher should have probably posted that also in their Google Classroom or shared it with you in another way. But please make sure that you have read through that information. That is the expectations that we uphold students to in the AP classes. And so it's also available on our North Tahoe High School website. The registration, just so you can put it on your calendar for the exam registration, will be due by November 6th, 2026. So you're asking, why is that 6 months in advance of when the actual exams are? Because they want us to give them that notice so they can prep their exams going into the road. So students do have to indicate that on November 6th or before, but you have a long window of time to kind of make that decision. We'll talk more about AP exams in a little bit different format. And then finally, for the nuts and bolts piece, I just want to put it out there that I will be hosting and offering junior ILP meetings. So I know for 9th and 10th grade, we've hosted many ILP meetings with your families already. We do that every year. Junior meetings typically happen in the fall timeframe. And so I'll be hosting and setting up and sending out information and invites about that junior ILP process. Probably I'm aiming for sometime in like mid-September, within a couple of weeks of when we get started. We got a couple more pieces to kind of put together to get that information out to you all, but I'm hoping not to wait too long into the fall. And then we try to aim and offer those meetings for the junior class up until about Thanksgiving time. And then we kind of transition into offering different ILPs for different grade levels. And so we focus on one grade level at a time. So keep an eye out for that information. It's strongly advised and encouraged. It's a great opportunity at 11th grade. We start really digging into the idea of after high school goals and processes and steps that students should be taking. We review high school so far, talk about where you're at in the process of preparing for graduation, and whatever next step it is that you are going to be pursuing, which we will actually spend a few minutes talking about in this actual video today. So let's give an overview about what 11th grade kind of is like. And to kind of give you an example of why 11th grade tends to be pretty important / challenging for students and families and us at school even, is that I'm going to demonstrate it on this kind of graph. And so on this graph on the screen, you can see, I call it the E and U distribution. Okay, so the effort and undertaking is that y-axis, the up and down axis there on the left. And the time in school is the x-axis across the bottom down there. And so in 9th grade, students tend to start relatively low in terms of effort and undertaking. Maybe effort is higher, but like generally the expectations around school, the difficulty of your classes tends to be fairly lower and increases over the course of 9th grade. As students move into 10th grade, things like a couple AP classes come in, maybe they start driving, maybe they start taking on some additional responsibilities or jobs. And so the effort and undertaking related to their academic experience at school in 10th grade tends to rise. They get a little bit more challenging, as it's probably supposed to be. It's not supposed to get super easier as you're going on. In 11th grade, though, and that's this school year, students tend to take on the most rigorous component of their academic experience while in high school. Okay, the requirements are higher, the expectations of those classes are higher, and the opportunities of those classes are higher. So students tend to take maybe a couple AP classes in 11th grade. They'll have US history, they'll have an English class, they'll have typically a higher level math class, a science class is very common, maybe a second CTE. So they have a number of things going on. 11th grade tends to also be a little bit more demanding outside of school. Maybe you're involved in athletics and you're maybe more of a leader on an athletic team or have a higher level of responsibility. Maybe you're working on the weekends or even after school. You have the opportunity to drive. All these kind of things require additional output from a student. So the effort and undertaking is usually kind of peaks in the 11th grade. 12th grade, it's still up there, but generally speaking, I would say the 12th grade actually has a slight drop in terms of the undertaking in relation to the academic experience. In 11th grade, we also require students to maintain that full set of classes. In 12th grade, if students are on track and don't have a need to take a full slate of classes, we do allow students to be unscheduled if it applies and is applicable to your plans and things like that. So maybe the academic experience is a little bit less, but depending on your plans for after high school, you might have a lot more demand on your time in relation to maybe a college application process or writing college essays or applying for scholarships. All those kind of things still will have additional added energy, effort, and undertaking for that student. Now, about halfway through 12th grade, students tend to kind of hit this thing called senioritis. And so that's where the effort and undertaking tends to take a nosedive into the ground through probably the last couple weeks of school, when students start figuring out, oh, shoot, I have to kind of like do something to graduate high school or keep my grades up for my college applications. Don't stress too much about this right now. It happens to a lot of students. It's a fairly typical process and experience of seniors, but it is something just to be aware of as you're navigating through school, that we have to keep an eye out. Kind of around February, March tends to be when the sun starts coming out a little bit more, the weather starts to improve a little bit. Students shockingly don't want to be in class. They maybe got their college admission stuff. Things start rolling towards that final end of the process, and they are ready to check out. And so the main thing is we want to avoid any major catastrophes during that window of time that could jeopardize any of your steps after high school. So 11th grade is important, and a lot of people would say it's probably the most important year of high school. And I would probably say that's fairly accurate. They're all relatively important, but it is something that usually the decisions that are made about classes and your performance in classes is most closely scrutinized in your 11th grade year. One of the main reasons is that is the typical time that colleges, for example, they'll see. That's the last set of grades that colleges will see when you are actually submitting your application initially. Okay. Students also start to really make that connection between what they're doing at school with what their plans and next steps after school or after graduation are during their 11th grade year. And that actually is a helpful thing if you have a student that's maybe less mature or you wish kind of got their act together a little bit. It's something that usually between 10th and 11th grade, we see some levels of maturation. We see some levels of connecting the dots of why school matters. And it doesn't necessarily make things all of a sudden better, but it will typically shift some perspectives that students maybe have while they're at school. So hang in there for that. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to highlight a couple big picture options. So the options after high school, and again, this is not an exhaustive look. This is more of a 30,000 foot view. So if you were looking down on Google Maps, kind of like seeing the big pictures. We're not digging into, street view at this point. Okay, we're not looking at what are the actual steps to get to this job or this type of career or this particular college or type of college. Okay, we're looking at what are the big bucket items or the big destinations maybe that we're aiming for. And then throughout this year and even into the fall and the school year next year as a senior, we'll be breaking down the different pieces of how we actually accomplish some of these different steps to reach a few of these goals. So I kind of put together a menu of some of the different postgraduate options. And so kind of working from the upper left down to the bottom right on your screen. So one of the options could be maybe you just want to go straight to work. Maybe it's something that you're working with your family or you have a job lined up that you really enjoy. Like you can go get a job after you graduate high school. There's no shame in that. There's no problem with that. That is an opportunity for students to work locally and contribute to our local communities or support your family or a family business and gain a lot of really important skills. So that is one of the options. Usually we encourage students to continue learning in some way after high school. Even if it's going to be that you're working in a business that your family runs, maybe there's some sort of training or apprenticeship or something that maybe would be helpful to take a class on or to engage in some additional learning. But generally speaking, like usually your high school diploma will get you through the doors of this straight to work opportunity. Kind of moving to the right, we have the military or volunteer service opportunities. That's going to be something that students start to look at also in 11th grade. So the volunteer opportunities could be like AmeriCorps or something like that, or maybe related to a faith-based organization or something similar. Okay, but the military opportunities and different service opportunities tend to start becoming more prevalent and available and aware during your junior year. Those don't have any costs associated with them. Those are usually free for students to pursue, both the work, volunteer opportunities as well as your military service. There's not any cost related to that. So you're going to be able to kind of like jump into that, and you have to just make some other commitments related to how you're going to be spending your time and where you're going to live. Moving to that upper right, we have the apprenticeship or internships opportunities. This is going to be typically something that is maybe a little bit less formalized, but you're seeing a lot more formalized apprenticeship programs out there in relation to a lot of trade-based organizations. So, for example, like becoming a lineman or a plumber or something like that. A lot of times people will go through a journeyman process or an apprenticeship program, and some of them are free. Some of them actually pay you to go through this program, while others sometimes will cost some money over the course of that apprenticeship or internship program. It's very wide. It varies quite widely, and we have a number here, mainly down in like Reno area or Sacramento areas, usually where some of these things are housed. But this is something that if you're interested in looking into an apprenticeship or an internship after you graduate high school to help you understand what you want to do, or to get your initial experience in, say, a trade like a plumber or an electrician or something like that, we can connect you with the correct people. So that is something to be aware of. Going to the lower left-hand corner of your screen, the trade and technical schooling, that's going to be a little bit more formalized version of an apprenticeship, where you're going to be actually going to a formalized typical school. But it's a little bit different than, say, a community college or a four-year college, in the sense that they're very focused programs that help students do a very focused particular thing. They're not necessarily going to be having you take an English class. They're not going to have you take extraneous math classes. They're going to have you take only the things that you need to be able to demonstrate to get a license, to get a job or training or education that's directly related to the future career that you're going to be holding. And so, some examples could be like Culinary Institute of America or Universal Technical Institute, Paul Mitchell, like the beauty salon or like esthetician and beautician schools. Those are going to be examples of trade and technical schooling. Schools in this bucket tend to be very, very different in terms of how much they cost. So it's something you'll have to do a little bit of research into. They can be very expensive in the long run, so just be aware of that. So like Universal Technical Institute might cost you $30,000 or $40,000 to go through their kind of year-and-a-half-year-long program to become an automotive technician, for example. But again, it kind of gets you through. You get placed in a job that you start making more money than if you didn't have any sort of training or education. Next over is a 2-year community college path. And there's a couple of things that we'll dive into in a future session about community college, but realistically, what you need to know right now is there's a bunch of ways that you can go through a community college, and there's a lot of them. There's about 116 now in California alone, and there's some in Nevada and all over the country that you could pursue education in. And that they do anything from certificates, very similar to maybe like a trade or technical school approach, which is a short, very focused thing that would help you maybe like get a promotion or maybe get access to a type of job that you want to do, to a transfer program, and sometimes even a bachelor's level program at some community colleges. And so most people tend to associate community college with either an associate's degree, which is a 2-year degree, which is not as in-depth as, say, a bachelor's degree, but it will help you, again, open doors to jobs or opportunities or licensing or things like that. And then you have the transfer path, which is essentially taking the first 2 years of a 4-year college experience, doing a lot of prerequisite work at the community college level, which saves usually time and some money. Money is the biggest one it will save. And then you would apply for transfer to a 4-year university and complete the last 2 or so years of that 4-year bachelor's degree program later down the road. Lower on the far lower right, you see the 4-year college or university. That's going to be your typical college experience, where you have kind of like your freshman through senior year. You're getting a bachelor's degree typically. Some schools have blended programs, so maybe a 4+1 or something like that, related to like getting a bachelor's and master's degree. And then it goes, many of the colleges will continue into graduate schools, medical schools, law school, veterinary school, whatever might be down the road. Okay, so this is going to be what a lot of students would consider in relation to kind of getting that start of that bachelor's degree program. So if you're aiming for a bachelor's degree, most students would start in one of those two areas, either the 2-year community college path or directly applying and enrolling in a 4-year college process. Okay, so here are a couple examples of what these might be. So like, for example, in the working world, you might look at a retail job, construction, working in landscaping, maybe it's a family business. Military might be a branch service, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps is another example. Apprentice and internships are going to be plumbing, construction, surveying might be one. Maybe it's a glass worker or a glazier. Trade school might be that culinary school, like I mentioned, but HVAC, dental assisting, medical assisting are all things that would maybe pursue school at a trade school. And then we have the 2-year college options. Okay, so that's going to be your community colleges. Our local community colleges up here are going to be Sierra College and Lake Tahoe Community College. So Sierra College has a satellite campus in Truckee. Their main campus is down in Rockland outside of Sacramento. And then our closest like full campus is actually Lake Tahoe Community College in South Lake, and they're wonderful too. But a lot of students look out of the area, so maybe you want to move to a different place in the state. So you can go to San Diego, you can go to Santa Barbara, you can go to Cuesta and San Luis Obispo, you can go to the Bay Area. Okay, those are all different options. Once again, I think there's 116 in the state of California right now. And then lastly is the 4-year college path, and that's going to be a program that will help you get into that 4-year bachelor's degree program and maybe pursue graduate school down the road. You can be a teacher, you can be an engineer, you can be a nurse. All those types of things generally require students to at least have a 4-year bachelor's degree. Okay, some examples that you can see on the screen include the CSU or Cal State system. We have the UC or University of California systems. Those are going to be a large bulk of where many of our North Tahoe High School students apply to, and most students will include them as part of their applications. We also have in-state private schools. I mean, Stanford and Caltech and University of San Diego. We have out-of-state publics, University of Iowa, places like that. We have out-of-state private schools, Harvards and Princetons and things like that. And we have international universities. We have students that sometimes will apply to schools abroad, and they can attend international universities. So I would say that's fairly uncommon, but it's something that is definitely worthwhile to explore. So those are all really cool opportunities that all students can start to take in. And again, this is not a end all be all. There are a lot of different paths and sometimes even mixes and matches that you can pursue. Just because you go straight to work for a little bit doesn't mean that you might want to go back in a year or two and maybe go pursue a college degree. Or you can get a college degree and potentially go work or go into a trade. There's no right or wrong path in this process. The biggest things that I think we have to really focus on as 11th graders and as we're helping students get ready for their life after high school is finding out what that idea on fit is. And we could use this fit example with all those things we just got done talking about. I'm going to give you an example of how fit works in the world of college, because that tends to be where we spend a lot of time working with families and students about this idea. But it really kind of flips that script. A lot of people, when we talk about college and this college list, a lot of people will start with the idea, what schools can I get into? What can I make a lot of money doing? I'm only interested in like the things that I've heard about or am aware of. I don't want to have this like open mind to what's out there. Okay. And in reality, when we say we want to find the best fit, we really want to understand a little bit more about the student and what they need and what they're looking for in their both collegiate experience, but also their future career. So we want to look into things like, what are my needs and wants? What are the big things that I'm looking for in a college or career? What are the things that help fulfill me? What fills my bucket? What are the things that really kind of like bring me true satisfaction? Like how much do I want to invest in that process, both time and money? Okay. Because, it could be a very expensive or time consuming process. If someone came in and said, I really want to be a doctor, but I really don't like school. There might be some conversations around like, well, that's going to be like an 8 to 10 probably year process of school or kind of like school stuff. What other careers might I want to look at? A lot of people tend to focus on the big pictures, like what are the things that everyone knows about? It's kind of like your top 20 sports teams, when maybe there's a bunch of other sports teams that maybe fit your identity more, or like your interests or your locality. Okay. And then what programs or careers fit those needs the most? So really kind of taking a step back and looking at what are those things. And I kind of liken it to car shopping. If you ever bought shop for a car, you might go in knowing exactly what kind of car you want, but a lot of times you might want to think about, hey, what are the things that I really need out of my car? Because while most cars will get you where you need to go, okay, they'll end up in the right spot. Some might do it faster, some might do it cheaper, some might do it more comfortably or more reliably. And so they're all different ways to actually accomplish the same goal. And so when we look at it, we want to kind of figure out what kind of car you are. What are the things that we want to do. So maybe you're a sports car. Maybe you want to accelerate through a program, have that 4+1 bachelor's and master's degree program available to you. Okay, so looking at something like that. Maybe you're a student more like a pickup truck. Maybe you want to attend a junior college for 2 years and then load up and get like their last couple years at a university. That might help save money, might help you support a family while you're, at your junior college, for example. Or maybe you are the minivan or the transit van, and you want to live close to where your family is. Maybe that's super important to you, and that's going to be a big need or a want for you, is to be able to still stay connected to your family roots, your community that you grew up in, and either have that safety net or be able to stay connected to that group. So, you know, you have to think about what really sets you apart. Okay, it's going to be something that um, you really have to kind of spend some think time about. Because if we were to imagine what our dream car really is, most people would not say the Toyota Corolla. um, but generally speaking, that car is probably one of the best balanced vehicles out there in terms of reliability, cost, gas mileage, like safety features, like a lot of those things. It checks a lot of the right boxes, but most people wouldn't necessarily say that's not the Harvard of cars, right? So they would probably put the Lamborghini or something like that. Um, and so really we want to kind of identify what are the things that we want that help us make sure that we're getting the best return on our investment. Okay, because we want to make sure that when we are looking at the costs, and we will again have some additional workshops, and students will actually get a lesson later on, typically in the springtime, from me about kind of financial aid and scholarships and stuff like that for all the juniors that are taking an English class. Here is usually where we run it through. Okay, but we want to like take a look at understanding what that cost is, because while all those options are great, we want to understand, do I want to take out go to a very expensive college and get a history degree, for example? No offense to history majors, but sometimes like the careers that pay a lot of money in the world of history may not be, like far and wide, right? There might be like slim. So you want to make sure that, if I'm going to go to a history major and I need to get a PhD in history to do this job, and I take out $250,000 in student debt to do that, how am I going to potentially be able to earn enough money to be able to work off that debt and be able to support myself and my family? So you want to look at the return on your investment as well, of is my outcome going to be supportive of the amount of investment that I might be putting into my college path. And there is a fine balance there, right? It's not to say that you should only go if it's free or if you don't have to borrow money. Like that is not necessarily what I'm saying either, but there is some walking of that balancing and that tightrope to understand a little bit. I'm going to talk to you briefly about some comprehensive review here. So comprehensive review is a term that colleges and universities use when they look at students in terms of admissions. When four-year colleges review, the vast majority, if not all of them, I won't say all, but I would say probably 98%, do some level of competitive admissions, meaning you have to submit an application. You're not an automatically admittable student. And so you have to apply, and there's some qualifications. Some of them are fairly open access, meaning they admit 98% of their students that apply. Others maybe admit less than 5%. Okay, and so comprehensive review is a term that colleges use. And if you want to learn more about this or experience this, I would strongly encourage you and reference back to that case study, because this is a big, really important thing that a lot of times people realize when they go through that activity, is that just because one group or one person views something one way on an application, another group can view it very, very differently, or have very different sets of instructions or things like that. So that's basically taking the individual elements of a student. So this picture of a tree. So, the trunk, maybe that's your GPA, the leaves are your extracurriculars, the roots are the classes that you took, or like maybe your background or something like that. And so all of those pieces kind of come together to paint the whole picture of a student. And so schools in various ways typically review students through a process called comprehensive review. And so they look at, how do we see this applicant potentially fitting into our school and being successful, meaning are you ready? Do your grades show that you're prepared? But also showing that like you have an interest, showing that you might be a good member of our community, showing that you bring some level of diversity. And diversity means a lot of things. It could be ethnic diversity, but it could also be financial diversity, could be where they're from diversity. We actually have somewhat of a benefit in that sense, being a rural school up here in North Tahoe. All of those things make up your own comprehensive profile. And every student here, while some attributes might look and be the same, you went to the same high school. That's all going to be the same for all of our students here on campus generally. Um, every piece of that looks a little bit different for every applicant. So that's where we see the variability also in like, why did this student get in, but this student didn't? Sometimes it's hard to tell and hard to understand a little bit about why colleges reviewed people one way versus the other. But it kind of comes down to this comprehensive review process. Okay. Later on, we go over some college and career stuff related to kind of college admissions. We'll dig a little bit deeper into this process. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview as we're starting to talk more about colleges and to prep us for these individual learning plan meetings where we'll kind of talk about these different attributes of a student. Additionally, I want to encourage juniors as you're starting to kind of like dabble in and dig deeper into things like career paths or majors, which usually lead to that career path. I want to encourage students to think more broadly than your kind of top few careers, right? So an example is maybe what you see on the screen is that only 8% of people who work in the healthcare industry, which is a huge industry, are actually doctors. However, when most people look at, I want to go, I like medicine, most people immediately gravitate to either being a doctor or a nurse. Okay, and those are great paths. Those are great careers. They're challenging careers. They're long educational paths. They have a lot of great benefits. There are some potential cons that people would need to consider too. But realistically, all of those jobs only make up a small portion of what the actual healthcare industry does and how it all runs. And those jobs in that healthcare industry can span any of those examples that I gave about post high school paths. Anything from straight to work, maybe you work as a custodian at a hospital, to kind of the very, very end of graduate school, maybe you're the doctor or like the neurosurgeon or something like that, and then anywhere in between. You could be a radiology technician. Okay, maybe that's a trade and technical school program. You could be a licensed vocational nurse. That might be a 2-year training program. You might be a registered nurse, and that might be a bachelor's degree plus a little bit, right? So there's some different paths, and I want to encourage students and families to kind of branch out beyond what just we know off the top of our head. These are what you see on the screen are examples of the career clusters. So a lot of ways when we're doing career exploration or talking about different careers, we usually have students sometimes start with some of these pieces like, oh, I could see myself working in like health science industries, or maybe I can work in like architecture, construction, and then exploring jobs within those different clusters because it starts with a basic level of interest, kind of an umbrella look at kind of what do I want to spend my time doing, and then you can dig into a lot of different careers. I mean, anything from being an architect, and exploring what the difference is between being an architect and an architectural engineer. Maybe it's looking at what's the difference between being architecture and landscape architecture, or surveying, or geomatical engineering, or cartography. Like all those kind of things have similar veins in terms of what they maybe have interests or skills in, but maybe approach it from a very different perspective. So we'll talk more about sometimes the career pathways through things like Scoir or some of our different pathways lessons or in our conversations in our ILPs. Usually we have students and families ask a lot of questions about testing, and testing is still a thing. It still exists. In 11th grade is when a lot of students really start thinking about taking the tests, and we're talking about typically the SAT or the ACT exams. Usually in the spring, late winter, springtime is when students in 11th grade start taking those actual exams. They take usually the fall PSAT, see what their score is, maybe do a little prep or adjustment if they want to take these tests, and potentially pursue that exam down the road. Getting an idea of what kind of schools maybe you're going to be looking at, though, was super helpful. It is a changing and dynamic landscape. At this time, for this recording, there isn't any testing requirements related to the UCs or the CSUs. However, there's word on the street, maybe in the future, that the UCs have been dabbling in maybe like, how do we reintegrate some level of testing in the future admission cycles down the road? It will not be for your admission cycle, but it is something just to be aware of. Vast majority of colleges out there are not test required. Okay, they are still test optional. There's between 50 and 100 schools. Again, it is a fluid landscape. Out of about 3,900 four-year universities that require an actual SAT or ACT exam as part of their admissions process. The vast majority of the other ones are going to be test optional, meaning if you take an exam and you don't feel like the score benefits you or your application or represents you well, you can choose to not submit that. If you choose to submit it, it can help you. Some schools won't hold it against you. Other schools will look at it if it doesn't help you and maybe it hurts your application. But other times, if you don't feel like the test is the right fit for you, you don't feel like you're a good test taker, if you struggle with test anxiety and you don't feel like it represents who you are very well, then you might just choose and opt out of needing to submit an SAT or ACT as part of your process. Um, in this day and age, I don't discourage people from taking the SAT. You can generally choose whether or not you want to utilize it. But taking those PSAT exams is helpful. It kind of gives you a little bit of a temperature of where you're at related to that. Finally, I want to wrap up showing you a couple tools that we'll be referencing and utilizing potentially throughout this school year. Students can utilize them now, but we will be kind of referencing them throughout our different conversations and forums that we have. Please take an active step in utilizing these. This is not something that we will not hold your hand like explicitly through this process necessarily. Students do have to take an active effort to pursue some of these things. The first one I'll reference that some students have accessed already, and we've mentioned historically in the past, is our college and career tool called Scoir. So Scoir is what it's called, but we pronounce it Scoir, like the score of the game. This is a tool that has a lot of data and information for students and families related to, generally speaking, the trade through the four-year college paths. There is some career exploration that is very valuable as part of this as well. But I think the biggest benefit and tool of this is their college and career platform. And so we utilize this a lot in the kind of research and planning process for the junior year, and then the application and kind of follow through and tracking piece in the senior year. So it's something that you want to look at. We will dig more into this in something like your ILP meetings. So we'll show you a little bit of this. We'll pull some information up during those conversations. So this is another plug that please book those ILP meetings when we book those together and share that information out. Another one is making sure that you're knowing where to find our YouTube page. A lot of the things like this video are hosted on there. And so you can go back and see historical things. We have a lot of like informational items. We try to record all of our meetings throughout the school year and post a recording. So if you're ever not like individual meetings, but like our large parent meetings or student meetings, if you're ever not able to make something, good chances it might show up on our YouTube page, because we want to make sure that, things come up, maybe you're working, maybe a competing event that you can't make it to that particular lesson or workshop or back to school night or something like that. We want to try to make sure that information is available to you, even if you weren't able to be there in person for an in-person meeting or something like this, where it's more of a webinar format. And then finally is our counseling website. This is a deep treasure trove of information. We try to keep it as up to date as possible. You can access forums, dashboards, appointment links, information about ILPs, connections to the FAFSA. I mean, there's so much stuff on here that you can access. I want to encourage all students to bookmark this. This is how you'll be able to make your appointments with us. There's a lot of information out there for families too, and we try to keep this as up to date as possible. It's a little bit hard to find on the school's website. I think you have to go to like the programs tab, and then there's like a counseling and wellness link, and there's a school counseling link in the menu. So it's a little bit of a jaunt to find the actual link, but you can go directly there with the link that you see on the screen and just bookmark that, and that will take you straight back to our website. And then realistically, the next step in this process is to pay attention. I send a lot of information out via email. Please pay attention to your emails. I try not to overdo it, but I think there's a lot of valuable information that we're able to communicate with you. And so while we know it can sometimes be a little bit overloading, we do think that it's fairly important. So we want to be as communicative as possible with you in relation to kind of what's going on at school, what your opportunities are, and then sending out reminders so that you don't miss out on things that maybe will be important to you or your family. So please keep an eye on those emails. We have a new email system this year, so I'm hoping that it goes well and that things don't get lost in the shuffle in that sense. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. There's a lot of information about how to contact us on the website as well. Email is definitely the fastest way to get a hold of me. But definitely, I'm happy to help you guys, happy to support you. Please keep an eye out for some information about the case study, PSAT, our ILPs that'll be coming up, and then other workshops that we might be sharing either through a pre-recorded video kind of like this, or an in-person opportunity that you maybe can come and ask questions. Lastly, if you do have any questions in relation to this, if it's like an urgent thing that you're wondering about, shoot me over an email. You can book an appointment as a parent. I'm happy to sit down. But a lot of the stuff that we talked about here, it kind of leads into our ILP process. So I want to encourage you, like, if you have questions or if your student wants to talk through some stuff, write that down. Let's set up an ILP. The ILP is really the kickoff, right? We might talk about something, it might give you some more homework. That doesn't just have to happen once a year. We can sit down again in a couple of weeks after that, or a month or two later, like, and revisit and come back to it. So just the ILP process will help us build that consistent line of communication that we have with you and your family. So I hope you have a great start of the school year. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Go Lakers.